Donald Trump today vowed to impose a 200% tariff on John Deere's import.
I'm just notifying John Deere right now. If you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States.
Just back in June, John Deere announced that they were relocating specific production lines to facilities in Mexico. Now, Donald Trump disagreed with this decision and left a significant threat that would ultimately affect the company's bottom line.
He said it would be a war America would win easily. He stood at podiums, surrounded by red hats and roaring crowds, and promised a trade revolution. Manufacturing would come back. The farmer would be the hero. China? They'd be begging for mercy. But the reality? It was never that simple. Trump's trade war didn't make America stronger. It didn't bring jobs back. And it didn't make China lose. Instead, it devastated American farmers, crippled small towns, and pushed companies like John Deere into shutting down plants, slashing jobs, and rethinking the future of rural America. This is the untold story of how one man's economic gamble turned into one of the biggest backfires in modern U.S. history. It all started in 2018. Trump launched an all-out assault on global trade, slapping tariffs on steel, aluminum, electronics, and hundreds of billions in Chinese imports. The message? America first. But trade is a two-way street. And when Trump hit China, China hit back. And they didn't go after luxury goods or tech giants. They went after the lifeblood of red state America: soybeans, corn, pork, and dairy. They targeted farmers. Because in this new economic war, the battlefield wasn't factories, it was the fields. Almost overnight, China, once the largest buyer of U.S. soybeans, purchasing over $12 billion a year, stopped buying. Shipments halted. Containers sat empty at ports. Soybeans rotted in silos. And that's just the beginning. Canada, the European Union, and even Mexico joined the retaliation, placing their own tariffs on American agricultural products and heavy machinery, which meant companies like John Deere, a Midwestern icon, found themselves cornered. Orders plummeted, production slowed, and soon plants across Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin began laying off workers and shutting down. In towns where John Deere wasn't just a company, but the heart of the economy, the silence was deafening. When the factory gates closed, so did the diners, the hardware stores, the local banks. It wasn't just job loss, it was cultural collapse. And what about the farmers? The ones Trump said would be the biggest winners? They were left with mountains of unsold crops, crashing prices, and rising debts. Soybean prices fell by over 20%. Dairy farmers dumped milk down drains. Livestock sat unsold as foreign buyers disappeared. Some family farms, handed down over generations, had no choice but to file for bankruptcy. For many, this was more than financial. It was emotional. It was betrayal. They had supported Trump. They had believed in the promise. But belief doesn't pay the bills. And belief doesn't stop the bank from taking your land. To stop the bleeding, the Trump administration announced the biggest farm bailout in U.S. history: $28 billion in emergency relief. But instead of going directly to struggling small farmers, a huge portion of that money ended up in the hands of large agribusinesses, foreign-owned companies, and politically connected operations. In some cases, million-dollar checks were sent to firms that didn't even need them. Meanwhile, small-town farmers received pennies on the dollar or nothing at all. The bailout wasn't a fix. It was a bandage on a wound that never should have existed. And the long-term damage? It's still unfolding. When China stopped buying from America, they didn't just wait. They turned to Brazil and Argentina. New shipping lanes were established. New supply chains formed. New trust was built. Now, even after the tariffs have softened, China isn't coming back the way it once did. America lost a customer it had spent decades nurturing. That kind of loss doesn't heal easily. John Deere, faced with falling domestic sales and trade uncertainty, began investing more overseas and automating what was left. Some towns never recovered. Rural counties saw school closures, hospital budget cuts, even the shutdown of emergency services. One mayor in Iowa described it this way: "We didn't lose a trade war. We lost our people." Because this wasn't just economic warfare, it was cultural erosion. And here's the painful irony. The very people who were hurt the most were the ones who believed the most. Farmers, factory workers, rural voters, they put their faith in Trump. They trusted that this was all for the greater good. But in the end, they were the ones abandoned on the battlefield. So, what's the lesson? Trade wars aren't fought on paper. They're not won at rallies or on TV. They're fought in fields, in factories, at kitchen tables where families decide whether they can hold on one more season. And when leaders gamble with global economies, it's never them who pay the price. It's the worker. It's the farmer. It's the rural town that gets no headlines. They call it a war. But the only ones who ever get hurt are the ones who never had a say. If this story hits home, share it. Because millions of Americans still don't know what really happened. And millions more are being told the same promises, all over again. Like, comment, and subscribe for more truth behind the headlines. And answer this: was the trade war worth it? Or was it just another illusion that cost too much? We'll see you in the comments.